The company year-end party had just wrapped when I pulled out of the downtown Raleigh garage into freezing rain. I'm Kendra Walsh, 36, Senior Project Manager at a major pharma company here in North Carolina. Single mom. My 8-year-old son Mason usually stays with my dad when I have late events. I turned onto our quiet street headlight, sweeping the front porch, and everything stopped. Mason was crumpled on the top step like a broken doll. Body twisted, face chalk-white lips, purple chest barely moving. My brother leaned against the wall, arms crossed, smirking. "Just roughhousing," he shrugged. My dad and his wife stepped out behind him, calm as Sunday morning. "He's fine," Dad said. Boys fall. I hit the wet concrete on my knees, dress soaking instantly, fingers shaking so hard I could barely dial 911. "My son isn't moving, he's 8. Please, hurry." The ambulance screeched up in 9 endless minutes. The lead paramedic took one look at my brother, color drained from his face, and pulled me aside. "Ma'am, is that really your brother?" he whispered. Because 3 years ago in Georgia, I rolled up on the exact same scene. And that guy was standing in the exact same spot, wearing the exact same smirk. If you ever thought blood would never hurt blood, this story is going to change your mind. Drop your city or just the word insane in the comments if you're already hooked. I read every single one. And now, let me tell you the rest. I slammed the car door and ran through the freezing rain, heels skidding on wet concrete. The porch light was on, but the house looked wrong, too still. Mason was sprawled across the top step like a discarded toy. 8-year-old body twisted at an unnatural angle, face chalk-white lips, purple chest rising in tiny, desperate jerks. One shoe missing. Backpack still on. Carter leaned against the brick wall, arms folded, that lazy smirk he'd worn since middle school. "Just messing around," he said, shrugging. "Kid's dramatic." Dad stepped out of the hallway, shadow his wife right behind him in her silk robe. "He's fine," Dad said, voice flat. "Boys play rough." His wife nodded. "He probably just winded himself." My purse hit the ground. I dropped to my knees beside my son, rain soaking through my dress, fingers shaking as I searched for a pulse at his neck. Weak, thready, but there. I fumbled the phone, thumb slipping twice before I got 911. "My 8-year-old son is collapsed on the porch. He's barely breathing. Please hurry." The operator kept me on the line. Calm questions I answered on autopilot while I kept one palm on Mason's chest, counting the tiny rises. Sirens finally screamed up the street. 9 minutes later felt like 90. 2 paramedics burst from the ambulance. The lead one knelt immediately, badge reading Ryan Carter, EMTP. His partner grabbed the stretcher and oxygen. Ryan checked pupils, felt for pulse, then glanced up at my brother leaning casually against the wall, his face drained of color. He stood slowly, walked over to me, lowered his voice so only I could hear. "Ma'am, is that really your brother?" I nodded, confused. He looked back at the porch, then at me again. Because 3 years ago in Georgia, I rolled up on a call that looked exactly like this. Same collapse, same orange juice story, same smirk. And that guy was standing in the exact same spot. Carter's smirk flickered for half a second, then snapped back harder. Ryan turned to his partner. "Priority 1. Possible intentional overdose. Possible child abuse. Let's move." They lifted Mason onto the gurney, so small against the orange straps and silver rails. I climbed in the back without asking. Ryan didn't stop me. As the doors closed, I looked through the small rear window. Carter was already on his phone, thumbs flying. Dad and his wife stood beside him, arms around each other, watching the ambulance disappear like it was somebody else's emergency. Inside the rig, Ryan hooked Mason to monitors, started an IV, kept his voice low the whole ride. "I testified in that Georgia case," he said. 9-year-old boy. Same high-dose diphenhydramine, same bruising pattern. Stepmom said he was clumsy. Charges dropped on a technicality. Family vanished the next week. I heard they moved east. Never thought I'd see that face again. The siren howled through red lights. Mason's hand was ice in mine. Ryan glanced at the heart monitor, then at me. Your brother travel much? I couldn't answer. Because in that moment, I understood the smirk wasn't lazy. It was rehearsed. The attending physician stepped into the hallway just as the sky outside the windows turned pale gray. She introduced herself as Dr. Lauren Hayes, 42, head of pediatric emergency medicine at Wake Med Children's Hospital. Her voice was quiet but carried the weight of too many nights like this. Your son is breathing on his own now, she said, leading me into a small consultation room. We've pumped his stomach, started aggressive IV fluids, and pushed activated charcoal. Blood panel shows diphenhydramine at adult overdose levels plus codeine. Combined with severe dehydration and multiple bruises in various stages of healing were required by North Carolina law to file an immediate CPS report and notify law enforcement. I nodded, throat too tight to speak. She hesitated. Mason is asking for you. He's awake. I walked into room 412 on legs that felt borrowed. My little boy looked impossibly small in the adult-sized bed wires running from his arms, oxygen prongs in his nose, monitors beeping steady but too fast. When he saw me, his chin trembled. Mommy. I sat on the edge of the bed and took his cold hand in both of mine. He started talking in a hoarse whisper, eyes wide like he was afraid the one comforting me. Carter said it was special orange juice for big kids. Said if I didn't drink it, he would tell everyone I still wet the bed. It tasted really bad, like medicine. Then my arms and legs got heavy and I couldn't stand up. He dragged me to the porch and pushed me down the top step so you would see me fall when you got home. He said then you would cry and look crazy and Grandpa's money would be his. I felt every word like a separate knife. Mason's eyes filled with tears. I tried to be brave, Mommy. I'm sorry I drank it. I pressed his hand against my cheek so he wouldn't see me break. You did everything right, baby. Everything. A nurse came in to adjust the IV. I kissed his forehead and walked back to the waiting area. Carter was scrolling his phone, feet up on a chair. Dad was reading an old People magazine like it was a normal Tuesday. Tamara sipped vending machine coffee, legs crossed, calm as ever. I stopped in front of my brother. What was in the orange juice? Carter didn't look up. Nothing. Kids dramatic. Dad closed the magazine. Kendra, you're exhausted. Carter was just playing. Tamara added, Mason has always been sensitive. You work too much. I stared at the man who once pushed me on the tire swing in the backyard. He's 8 years old and you're calling poisoning playing. Carter finally met my eyes, smirk still there. Prove it. That single sentence snapped something inside me. I pulled out my phone and dialed the one person who could turn prove it into a life sentence. Marcus picked up on the first ring. It's me, I said, voice shaking with rage, not fear. I need everything you can find on Carter Walsh. Bank records, travel purchases, messages, burner phones, everything, starting tonight. Marcus didn't ask why. He just said, send me a photo of his driver's license. I'll have the first packet in 6 hours. I hung up and looked at the 3 people who shared my last name. Get out of this hospital, I told them. Do not come back. Do not call. Do not text. You are done here. Carter stood stretching like he had all the time in the world. Good luck with that, sis. They walked away without looking back. I returned to Mason's room, pulled the chair as close as the rails allowed, and held his hand until the sun came up. My phone vibrated against the plastic armrest while Mason finally slept off the last of the sedatives. I slipped into the hallway so the ring wouldn't wake him. Marcus didn't bother with hello. Screen share me. Now. I opened the secure link he dropped. The first folder was labeled simply, Carter. Master. The first document was a scanned page from our grandfather's revocable living trust, revised 3 months ago when his lungs started failing. Page 9, paragraph 14, B. I read it twice before the words sank in. If at any time the primary beneficiary Mason Walsh is determined by two licensed North Carolina physicians to suffer from a chronic physical or psychological condition that impairs his ability to manage property, the entire principal of $4,200,000 shall immediately vest in the next eligible male descendant in direct line Carter Walsh, free of trust. Carter had photographed the page himself. The metadata showed the picture was taken inside the nursing home business office in Greensboro, 92 miles west of Raleigh. Security footage Marcus pulled showed my brother walking in wearing a Duke hoodie signing the visitor log as family member, quick errand and leaving 27 minutes later. That same week he bought a burner phone at a Walmart in Durham cash. That same night he filled the tank of his black Civic and drove south. Stop 1, Macon, Georgia. 420 miles, 6.5 hours. He checked into the Scottish Inn under the name C. Reed, paid 3 nights cash left after 1. The next afternoon, a 9-year-old boy collapsed in the parking lot of a Dollar General after drinking free orange soda from a friendly stranger. Hospital found diphenhydramine at near-toxic levels. Mother swore the kid never took medicine. Case closed as accidental ingestion. Stop 2, Montgomery, Alabama, 380 miles further. Different fake ID, same cash. 8-year-old at a library summer reading program offered special punch. Same collapse, same drug, same empty investigation. Stop 3, Birmingham. Same pattern. Stop 4, Lexington, Kentucky. Stop 5, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Every single time, Carter changed the dose by a few milligrams, changed the delivery drink, changed the location. He was calibrating, practicing, perfecting the recipe that would make a healthy child collapse long enough to trigger psych evaluations without killing him because a dead beneficiary still inherits. Marcus had toll tag pings gas station CCTV of Carter pumping gas-alone pharmacy surveillance of him, buying adult-strength Benadryl with cash, motel keycard logs showing only one person ever entered those rooms. No second driver. No accomplice on camera. Just Carter. Dad and Tamara never rode with him 0 miles. They didn't know until he came home from the Georgia trip bragging over steak dinner that Phase 1 worked perfectly. They listened, asked no questions, and when anyone later mentioned strange collapses on the news, they changed the subject. They never helped plan. They never helped buy drugs. They never touched the other boys. But they protected him anyway. Marcus's last message popped up while I was still staring at the timeline. He's been waiting for Mason to be old enough to trigger the medical review clause. Your son was always the final exam. I closed the phone, walked back into the room 412, and looked at my sleeping 8-year-old. Carter had spent 3 months turning himself into a traveling poisoner just to steal money that was never his, and my own father chose to look the other way. I left Mason with 2 plainclothes deputies the hospital assigned after the CPS hold and caught the 6:05 a.m. flight out of RDU. First stop Hartsfield-Jackson, Atlanta. I rented a gray Camry under my new corporate card and drove the 420 miles to Macon, Georgia in one shot. The mother met me in the parking lot of a Chick-fil-A off I-5. Her hands shook as she handed over a notarized affidavit and a thumb drive. Her son, now 11, stayed in the back seat behind her, staring at me with eyes that had seen too much. Carter called himself Chris, she said. Gave my boy a bottle of orange Fanta in the park. 10 minutes later, he dropped like a rock. Doctors said it was the highest diphenhydramine level they'd ever seen in a living child. Police called it an accident. I knew better. The thumb drive contained Ring doorbell footage, Carter in a gray hoodie, smiling, handing the bottle, walking away, whistling. Second stop, Montgomery, Alabama. I flew into MGM, rented another car, drove the 380 miles. The mother met me at a Cracker Barrel off the interstate. She slid across a manila envelope sealed with evidence tape. Inside medical records, toxicology report, and a pharmacy receipt Carter had accidentally dropped in the trash, recovered by a janitor who thought it looked suspicious. Her son, now 12, had night terrors for 18 months after drinking special punch from a nice man at the library. She had kept the empty bottle in a freezer bag. Lab retest commissioned by Marcus showed diphenhydramine residue and codeine. Chain of custody intact. Third stop, Lexington, Kentucky. I landed at Bluegrass Airport, rented a third car, drove the remaining distance. The father met me at the curb, eyes hard. His son had been 9 when Carter offered free lemonade samples on the porch. They handed me the Ring doorbell SD card, the original hospital draw sheet with drug levels, and the boy's therapy records and a notarized statement. The father's voice cracked only once. "Tell that bastard he didn't win." Fourth stop, Chattanooga, Tennessee. I drove straight through from Lexington, 6 more hours. The family invited me into their living room. The boy, now 10, sat on the couch, clutching a drawing he'd made of the nice man with the blue cooler. The parents gave me the cooler itself, still sealed in an evidence bag, the empty Gatorade bottle inside, lab report confirming the same chemical signature. They also handed over a second SD card, gas station surveillance of Carter, filling the cooler with ice and powdered medication at 2:14 a.m. the night before. Every family gave me the exact same 3 things: a sworn notarized affidavit, original medical proof, time-stamped video of Carter acting completely alone. Every receipt was paid in cash. Every motel keycard logged only 1 occupant. Every toll tag record showed only his black Civic. I flew home with 4 sealed evidence boxes, 4 thumb drives, and a lead-lined stomach. Back in Raleigh, Marcus met me at a climate-controlled storage unit he had rented under a Shell LLC. We laid everything across a folding table: affidavits in date order, medical timelines, color-coded by state map with red pins and exact mileage logs, Amazon order history pulled via subpoena, burner phone, cell tower pings. The final piece was a voicemail Carter had left the family lawyer 3 months earlier, recovered from the lawyer's cloud backup. "Hey, Mr. Ellison, quick hypothetical. If my nephew ever got diagnosed with severe anxiety or something, and 2 doctors signed off, he couldn't handle money, the trust would go to me automatically, right? Just asking for a friend." The lawyer had saved it in case. By the end of those 15 days, I had a federal package 5 inches thick. Marcus drove me to the FBI field office on New Bern Avenue. We carried the boxes inside together and handed them to Special Agent Monica Reyes. She flipped through the top folder, looked up at me, and said the only words I needed to hear. "This is airtight. We're taking it from here." I walked out knowing the wheels were turning. Carter still thought he was untouchable. He had no idea the storm was already over his head. The night of the Pharma Innovation Awards arrived with a hard December chill and a sky full of stars. I stood in the green room at the Raleigh Convention Center, smoothing the midnight blue silk gown one last time. My reflection looked calm. Inside, every nerve was on fire. The invitation had gone out 10 days earlier, simple cream cardstock, gold lettering, family photo opportunity, and champagne toast, honoring Gregory Walsh's birthday. They RSVP'd within an hour. Carter walked through the private entrance at 6:42 p.m. Sharp black Tom Ford suit, white pocket square hair slicked back like he was walking a runway. He kissed my cheek with that same lazy smirk. "Big night, sis. Proud of you." Dad followed in a navy tux, arm looped through Tamara's. She wore emerald satin that caught every light. They posed for the official photographer I'd hired, FBI-calibrated lenses, 48-megapixel time-stamped. Carter threw an arm around Dad's shoulders, flashed perfect teeth, laughed at something Tamara whispered. The picture looked like the perfect American family. I led them to the round VIP table, dead center poured Dom Perignon, raised my flute. To new beginnings. Carter clinked hardest. To new beginnings. The lights dropped for the opening video. 400 executives, investors, reporters filled the hall. WRAL and Spectrum News cameras rolled live. My company stream was already at 60,000 concurrent viewers. My boss took the stage, ran through sponsors, then turned to me with a grin. And our 2025 Employee of the Year for the second consecutive year, Kendra Walsh. The spotlight hit me. Applause thundered. I walked up the 3 steps, accepted the crystal trophy, and stepped to the microphone. The 200-inch LED wall behind me flashed pure white. I smiled the smile I had practiced until my cheeks hurt. "This award isn't mine," I said, voice steady. "It belongs to every child who has ever been hurt by someone they trusted." First slide, Carter at 19, hoodie up, paying cash for Benadryl in Macon. Second, Carter at 20, handing the red bottle in Montgomery. Third, Carter at 21, walking away in Lexington. Fourth, Carter at 22, pouring powder in Chattanooga. Fifth, Carter 3 months ago, photographing the trust clause. Sixth, the clause itself highlighted. Seventh, his text to the lawyer. 400 people inhaled at once. 4 young men stood from different tables. 14, 15, 15, 16 now. They turned and pointed at the VIP table in perfect unison. "That's the man who poisoned me," the Georgia boy said, voice carrying across the silent hall. The Alabama boy stepped forward. "He did it to me too." The Kentucky boy and Tennessee boy just stared, tears running. Carter's champagne flute slipped from Carter's fingers and exploded on the marble. His smirk vanished. His face went dead white. He looked at me, mouth opening and closing like a fish. Then he screamed, raw and ragged. My plan was perfect. He bolted, knocking over chairs, sprinting for the side exit. 2 agents in tuxedos cut him off at the knees. He hit the floor hard, cuffs clicked, Dad surged up. "That's my son." Tamara grabbed his arm, shrieking my name, trying to pull Carter away from the marshals. 4 more agents moved in. Dad was cuffed for obstruction, Tamara for accessory after the fact. Carter twisted on the floor, face purple, spit flying. "You set me up? You jealous bitch!" An agent slammed his face back down. The live stream counter rolled past 5 million and kept climbing. I looked straight into the nearest camera. This is what happens when you try to destroy a child for money. The hall erupted in chaos, flashes, shouts, phones held high. Carter was dragged out, still screaming, Dad and Tamara in tears behind him. I stayed on stage until the last cuff clicked. Then I walked off, trophy in one hand, Mason's future in the other. The MC's voice rang out over the hall. And the 2025 Employee of the Year is Kendra Walsh. 400 people rose in a wave of applause. I walked up the 3 carpeted steps, accepted the heavy crystal trophy, and stepped to the microphone. The lights dimmed slightly. The massive screen behind me flashed pure white. I smiled the smile I had practiced in the mirror 100 times. "This award isn't really mine," I began. "It belongs to every parent who has ever had to fight their own blood to protect their child." The first slide appeared. Carter 19, hoodie up, paying cash for 4 boxes of adult-strength Benadryl at a Walmart in Macon, Georgia. Timestamp burned in the corner. Gasps rolled through the room like a wave. Second slide. Carter 20, handing a red plastic bottle of orange soda to a 9-year-old boy in a Dollar General parking lot. The boy collapses 10 seconds later. Security cam freeze frame. Third slide, Carter 21, walking away from a collapsed child on a Lexington porch, looking back once to check no one is watching. Fourth slide, Carter 22, pouring white powder from a folded paper into a blue Gatorade bottle in a Chattanooga gas station bathroom. Mirror selfie, smirking. Fifth slide, Carter 3 months ago, phone pointed at page 9 of Grandpa's revised trust inside the Greensboro nursing home. The clause circled in red. Sixth slide, the clause blown up, yellow highlight, if. Beneficiary Mason Walsh is medically determined unfit, entire principal vests immediately in alternate beneficiary Carter Walsh. Seventh slide, text message screenshot Carter to the family lawyer. So if Mason ever gets like anxiety or whatever, and 2 docs sign off, the money's mine, right? Just asking for a friend. LOL dead silence. 4 young men, now 14 to 16, stood from separate tables across the hall. One from Georgia, one from Alabama, one from Kentucky, one from Tennessee. They turned and pointed straight at the VIP table. "That's him," the Georgia boy said, voice cracking but clear. "He poisoned me for practice." The Alabama boy stepped forward. "Me too." The Kentucky boy just stared, tears running. Carter's chair screeched backward. His face went the color of paper. He looked at me, mouth working, no sound. Then he screamed, voice cracking across the hall. My plan was perfect. He bolted, knocking over chairs, sprinting for the side exit. 2 agents in tuxedos cut him off at the knees. He hit the marble hard. Cuffs snapped shut. Dad surged up. "That's my son. Let him go." Tamara grabbed his arm, shrieking my name like a curse, trying to pull Carter away from the agents. 4 more agents moved in. Dad was cuffed for interfering with a federal arrest. Tamara for accessory after the fact. Carter twisted on the floor, face purple, spit flying. "You set me up. You jealous bitch." An agent slammed his face back down. The live stream counter on the big screen rolled past 5 million viewers and kept climbing. I looked straight into the nearest camera. This is what happens when someone decides a child's life is worth less than money. The hall erupted in chaos, flashes, shouts, phones held high. Carter dragged out, still screaming, Dad and Tamara in tears behind him. I stayed on stage until the last cuff clicked. Then I walked off, trophy in one hand, Mason's future in the other. 11 months later, the federal courthouse in downtown Raleigh delivered the final verdicts under a cold December sky. Carter Walsh, 23, stood in orange while the clerk read the counts: 5 attempted murders by poisoning across state lines, interstate transportation of controlled substances with intent to harm minors, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud a trust. The judge looked over his glasses and sentenced him to 40 years in USP Atlanta with no parole eligibility for 25. Carter didn't flinch. He just stared at me the entire time, lips curled in the same smirk until the marshals dragged him away. Tamara Walsh, 39, had taken a plea the week before. 8 years at FCI Tallahassee for accessory after the fact and failure to report felony child abuse. She cried when the sentence was read, mascara running down her cheeks, begging the judge to let her say goodbye to her son. Request denied. Gregory Walsh, 59, stood last. The man who taught me to ride a bike now wore handcuffs and a look 10 years older. Misprision of felony, 6 years at FCI Butner Low. He kept his head down the whole time. When the gavel fell, he finally looked up at me. I met his eyes and turned away. The trust was dissolved the same week under North Carolina's fraudulent transfer statutes. The full $4,200,000 was transferred into a new irrevocable special needs trust with Mason as sole beneficiary and me as sole trustee. A separate civil jury added $3 million in punitive damages secured against any future earnings Carter might ever make. I filed the paperwork to change our legal names the day the ink dried. Mason Hayes and Kendra Hayes. New birth certificate, new social security numbers. New everything. We moved 3 hours west to a quiet street outside Charlotte where nobody knows our old name. New schools, new pediatrician, new therapist who specializes in childhood trauma recovery. Mason still wakes up some nights screaming Carter's name, but the screams are getting quieter. He started travel baseball in the spring. When he hit his first grand slam and rounded third, he pointed straight at me in the bleachers and grinned so wide the coach said his face might crack. I cried harder than the night it all began. Dad wrote once from prison. 3 handwritten pages about how he only wanted to keep peace in the family and never meant for anyone to get hurt. I read the first paragraph, walked to the backyard fire pit, and burned the rest. Mason roasted marshmallows over the ashes and asked if the orange glow was pretty. I told him it was the prettiest fire we'd ever had. Tamara's prison birthday card arrived in June. I wrote return to sender, person unknown at this address across the envelope in red marker and dropped it back in the mailbox. Carter's appeal was denied in a 21-page opinion that called his conduct among the most calculated and depraved this circuit has seen. The other 4 boys, now teenagers, started a private Discord server they named The Five. They play Fortnite, trade baseball cards, and sometimes when the nightmares hit, they talk. They call me Aunt Kendra, even though we're not related. They call Mason little bro. They're family now. I kept my job. They gave me a bigger title, a corner office with actual windows and unlimited remote days. With the first grant from the settlement, I started the Safe Haven Trust anonymous emergency funding for single parents whose kids are being targeted by relatives. First year, we helped 41 families move, change names, and disappear safely. Some evenings, I sit on the back porch watching Mason chase lightning bugs across the yard. He catches one cups, it gently runs over and holds it up to my face. Look, Mom, it's still glowing. We open our hands together and watch the tiny light rise into the dark. Free. If you're listening to this and someone in your family is hurting your child, hear me. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. You are not alone. Record everything. Save everything. Fight like your child's life depends on it, because it does. Because sometimes the monster doesn't hide under the bed. Sometimes it sits at your dinner table wearing the face of someone you once called brother. And sometimes justice comes, but only if you're brave enough to drag it into the light. Mason just ran up grass-stained knees, jar full of fireflies. Can we let them go now? Yeah, baby, let them go. We unscrewed the lid together and watched every single one blink into the night sky. Free.